help us hit our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support drives us to create even more wonderful stories. Thanks for being part of our journey. In this video, I followed her to the motel thinking I was paranoid, but what I saw behind that door shattered everything. Mark always trusted Laura. They had been married for 7 years, had a small house in the suburbs, and were even planning to start trying for a baby this fall. Everything on the surface seemed calm, too calm. It was just past midnight when he rolled over in bed and saw the glow of her phone light up. He wasn't snooping. He didn't mean to see it, but he did. A message popped up on her lock screen. Just 4 words. Same place as last time. His breath caught. His heart started pounding. He stared at it, frozen. As her phone dimmed again and the room returned to darkness, Laura was asleep next to him, facing away, breathing steadily. Peacefully, Mark lay there, his mind racing. He didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was work-related. But deep down, something didn't feel right. He remembered how distant Laura had been lately, how she stayed longer at the gym, how she laughed at her phone but never shared what it was, how she avoided eye contact when he asked about her day. For the first time in his marriage, Mark felt something he had never felt before. Suspicion. He wanted to confront her right there, shake her awake, demand an explanation, but something told him to wait, to watch, to know for sure before he said a word, because once the truth came out, there would be no going back. And so he closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, but inside, everything had changed. You won't believe how deep the betrayal goes. Keep watching. The next chapter will make your jaw drop. More in the next chapter. The next morning, Mark pretended everything was normal. He kissed Laura on the cheek, made his usual coffee, and joked about the weather. But inside, he was analyzing every move she made, every word, every hesitation. Laura said she was going to her usual Saturday morning gym session. She even changed into her tight black leggings and that sports bra Mark had complimented 100 times before. But something was off. She didn't ask him to join her like she used to. Didn't offer to grab brunch afterwards like she always did. Mark waited until she left, then followed 10 minutes later, staying a few cars behind, careful not to be seen. He felt ridiculous, like a character in a cheap movie, but when he pulled into the gym parking lot and didn't see her car, his stomach dropped. He waited, 5 minutes, 10, 15, still nothing. He even parked and walked into the gym lobby, pretending to scroll on his phone. He knew the girl at the front desk, Jenna, from a few mutual barbecues with neighbors. She smiled and said, "Hey, haven't seen you in a while." "Laura's not here today, either." Mark forced a smile. "Oh yeah? She told me she had a class this morning." Jenna frowned. "Nope. She hasn't been to her usual class in 3 weeks." Mark walked out of the gym with a thunderstorm brewing inside his chest. His hands were cold. His mouth was dry. He got back into his car and sat in silence, staring at his steering wheel. Where was she going every Saturday morning if not the gym? And why did she lie so smoothly? He opened his maps history on her iPad back home, the one synced with her phone. The location showed the same place every Saturday. Sunset Pines Motel, a place on the edge of town. Cheap, quiet, anonymous. Mark's hands trembled. She wasn't just lying. She was cheating. And it wasn't just a suspicion anymore. Now he had proof, but what he did next, no one could have expected. This story is just beginning to unfold. What Mark decides will change everything. Don't miss what happens next. Coming up in the next chapter. That evening, Mark couldn't sleep. The motel name burned in his mind like a fever dream. Sunset Pines. He knew he couldn't confront her yet. He needed more than a map pin. He needed to see it for himself. The next Saturday, Mark woke up before Laura. He cooked breakfast like usual, even complimented the dress she wore over her gym clothes. His voice didn't shake, but his fingers did as he poured her coffee. When she left, he waited exactly 7 minutes, then followed. This time, he stayed even further behind, taking turns a block later than her, timing traffic lights, and just like the map had shown, she didn't drive toward the gym. She turned off onto Highway 16, past the gas station, and pulled into the parking lot of Sunset Pines Motel. Mark parked his car 2 blocks away, tucked between a closed diner and a used tire shop. He watched from a distance as Laura stepped out of her car. She looked over her shoulder once, then walked confidently to room 214. That detail gutted him. She didn't hesitate. She had done this before. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Mark circled the back of the motel, pretending to be a delivery guy. The back door to the reception area was propped open with a brick. He slipped inside. The young receptionist barely glanced up as Mark leaned over the counter. "I'm here to pick up my brother's phone. He left it in room 214 yesterday," he said calmly. The girl didn't even question it. "Oh yeah, I remember them. Came in around the same time yesterday, too." Mark's blood turned to ice. "Them, plural." She slid him a duplicate key. Room 214 sat upstairs at the far end, past broken vending machines and faded carpet. He walked the corridor slowly, hearing the muted sounds of TV static and distant laughter. When he stood in front of the door, he froze. He could knock. He could unlock it. He could walk away. Instead, he pressed his ear against the door. A man's voice, low, familiar, and Laura's, laughing. Mark's hand tightened around the key, but just as he moved to unlock the door, it swung open from the inside, and there, standing shirtless, was not a stranger. It was Travis, Mark's best friend since college, and Laura was right behind him, her eyes going wide. Not with guilt, but with fury. "Why are you here?" she demanded. Mark didn't say a word. He just looked at Travis. "You've been sneaking around behind my back with him?" Mark asked quietly, but the answer that came next was something Mark never expected. "You weren't supposed to find out yet," Laura whispered. Yet, what did that mean? There's more to this betrayal than Mark ever imagined, and what he's about to discover will flip this entire story upside down. Stick around. It gets even crazier in the next part. Here's what happens next. Mark stood in the doorway, unable to move. The woman he married, the woman who once cried in his arms on their honeymoon, whispering how she couldn't live without him, now looked at him like he was the problem. And Travis didn't even flinch. "I told you to wait," Laura said, her voice low but sharp, like she was holding something back. Mark's mind was racing. "Wait for what? You were going to tell me?" he asked, stepping into the room. He could still smell the cheap motel soap, and worse, Laura's perfume, their perfume. His stomach turned. Travis sat on the edge of the bed and finally spoke. "Look, man, this isn't what you think." "Oh, really?" Mark snapped. "Because it sure as hell looks like my wife and my best friend have been screwing behind my back in a room that rents by the hour." Laura grabbed Mark's arm. "We need to talk alone," she said, cutting a sharp look toward Travis. Mark didn't respond. He looked at the cheap motel dresser, the half-drunk wine glass, the wrinkled bedsheets, and then back at her. "How long?" he asked. She blinked, swallowed. "7 weeks," she whispered. 7 weeks. Mark felt like something inside him cracked, but before he could say anything more, Travis stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left the room without a word. The silence between them was thick. Laura sat down and took a deep breath, then said something that would change everything. "It didn't start because I stopped loving you. It started because I found something." Mark froze. "What are you talking about?" he asked, voice low. Laura looked up at him, eyes glassy. "You've been hiding things too. I found the receipts. I found the messages on your laptop." His blood went cold. "What messages?" But Laura didn't answer immediately. She stood up and opened the drawer beside the bed. From it, she pulled out a small black folder. Inside, printed screenshots. His messages to someone named Elise. Flirty, suggestive. From months ago. Mark's face went pale. "This isn't real," he muttered. "Oh, it's real," Laura snapped. "But what you don't know, Mark, is who Elise really is." Mark's heart dropped. Laura smirked bitterly. "She's not just some random woman. She's part of why I did this. You want the truth?" She leaned in close. "Elise is my sister." And just like that, everything flipped. Mark realized he wasn't the only one with secrets. And now, this wasn't just a betrayal. This was a trap. What Laura planned next will leave Mark speechless. Keep watching. It only gets darker from here. Coming up in the next chapter. Mark stared at the folder in his hands, heart pounding in his chest. The screenshots of his own flirtatious texts to a woman named Elise were undeniable. But now that Laura had revealed Elise was her sister, nothing made sense anymore. How could Laura's own sibling have been involved in such an elaborate trap? You planned this? Mark asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Laura nodded slowly. Not from the beginning. At first, I just wanted to confirm if you were really cheating. Elise volunteered to help, but then we started to enjoy watching you lie. Mark's breath caught in his throat. You enjoyed it? Laura's face hardened. You were gaslighting me for months. Mark, do you think I didn't notice you locking your phone at night? The sudden business trips? You thought I was stupid. Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing the motel room floor, suddenly claustrophobic. I never slept with her. I was stupid. Yeah, I flirted, I entertained it, but it never went beyond that. Laura's laugh was dry and bitter. Doesn't matter. You betrayed me the moment you typed that first message. She sat back on the bed and crossed her arms. But I knew you'd deny everything if I just confronted you. So we flipped the game. Mark froze mid-step. What does that mean? Laura smiled. Elise was never interested in you. She just wanted revenge for what you did to her. Mark blinked, confused. What I did to Elise? Laura stood and took a slow step toward him. You don't even remember, do you? She opened her phone and showed him a photo. It was from 3 years ago. Mark, standing too close to a much younger Elise at a Christmas party, visibly drunk. His hand on her back, her face uncomfortable. You made her feel unsafe. You cornered her in the kitchen and told her she'd regret rejecting you. She never told me. Until I asked her to help me trap you. Mark's knees almost gave out. He barely remembered the party. He'd had too much whiskey. But he couldn't deny it was him in the photo, and now everything Laura had done. The affair, the motel, the confrontation, wasn't just revenge for his emotional betrayal. It was payback for something much darker. He looked up at her, ashamed, confused, humiliated, and then she said the one thing that left him completely breathless. Oh, and Travis? Yes, not just my fling. He's Elise's fiancé. Now that the real plan is out in the open, what comes next will shock even Mark. Stay with us. The story is about to explode. In the next chapter, Mark sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the carpet like it could somehow explain everything. His chest tightened with every breath, his heart thudding like a war drum. He had just learned that Travis, the man Laura was sleeping with, was Elise's fiancé. Everything he thought he knew had twisted into something unrecognizable. Laura didn't just cheat out of spite. She coordinated the entire betrayal with Elise, and the man involved was tied to them both. He looked up at Laura, who stood silently by the dresser, arms crossed, gaze unshaken. There was no remorse in her expression, only cold, calculated determination. She had planned this revenge, step by step, and he had walked right into it. You really think you've won? Mark muttered bitterly. You think this makes you better than me? Laura didn't flinch. This isn't about winning. It's about consequences. You played with people like they were disposable. Now you get to feel what that's like. Mark's voice cracked. I was drunk. I made mistakes. I messed up, yeah. But you destroyed everything. Laura's lip twitched. We rebuilt the truth. You just never liked how it looked when it wasn't covered in your lies. Mark stood, fists clenched at his sides. I could have changed. I would have. You never even gave me a chance. Laura walked over slowly, handed him a small envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, already signed by her. You had your chances, she said quietly. You wasted every single one. Just then, the motel door creaked open. Mark turned in alarm. But it wasn't Travis, it was Elise, and in her hand was a USB stick. This isn't over, she said calmly. You think all we did was trap you for Laura? Mark, you're about to find out what else we uncovered. Mark stared at her, confused and terrified. What are you talking about? Elise gave a half smile. This little drive contains every single woman you ever messaged, and a few surprises of our own. The air went dead. Mark didn't speak. He didn't move. because for the first time, he realized something far worse than being cheated on or exposed. He was about to lose not only his marriage, but everything tied to his name, and they were going to burn it all down. Think it can't get more intense than this? You have no idea what's coming next. Keep watching. In the next chapter, Mark snatched the USB stick from Elise's hand like it was a live grenade. His mind spun with 1,000 questions, but the room was dead silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. He stared at the drive, then at Elise, then finally at Laura, who said nothing, only watched. "What the hell is this?" Mark asked, his voice strained and trembling. Elise stepped forward, her calmness more terrifying than anger. "This isn't just about cheating anymore," she said. "This is about everything you thought would never catch up with you." Mark hesitated for a long second, then shoved the drive into his laptop on the table. Files popped up, dozens of folders labeled with women's names, dates, cities. Some went back 6 years. Laura crossed her arms tighter. "You weren't just unfaithful. You were running your own game, sleeping with women while we were in therapy, while I was in the hospital, while we were trying for a child." The truth hit like a freight train. Mark had no defense. He stuttered. "Some of those names, that was before we got married." "No," Elise cut in. "Some of them were from last fall, while you were telling Laura you wanted to adopt." Mark's knees weakened. He collapsed onto the motel chair, the blood draining from his face. "Why would you save all this?" he whispered. Elise narrowed her eyes. "Because I had a feeling about you from the beginning, and Laura trusted you too much, but I didn't." The room fell into an unbearable stillness. Then Laura broke it. "We're going public, not just to your friends, to your company, to the press if we have to." Mark shot up. "You're bluffing. That would ruin you too." Laura raised an eyebrow. "I have nothing left to lose. You already ruined me the day you made me think I was the crazy one." Then Elise delivered the blow. "Unless," she said slowly, "you give us what we want." Mark narrowed his eyes. "And what the hell do you want?" Laura walked toward him, each step deliberate. "We want everything you've been hiding. Your money, your secrets, and then we want you gone." Mark's throat dried. He realized too late he had underestimated them both. "You thought it couldn't get more personal? You were wrong. Keep watching, because in the next chapter, Mark makes a desperate move that no one saw coming. Coming up next. Mark sat in the corner of the motel room, eyes locked on the USB stick still plugged into his laptop. His mind was racing, but he stayed silent while Elise paced the floor and Laura sat, unmoved, staring out the window like she'd already made peace with what was coming. He knew now he wasn't walking away from this clean. "You want everything?" Mark finally said, his voice low and bitter. "Fine. I'll give you something you didn't expect." He reached into his bag slowly and pulled out a thin envelope. He tossed it on the bed beside Elise. She opened it, suspiciously at first, but her eyes widened when she saw what was inside. Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore accounts. Accounts not even Laura had ever heard of. "You think this proves you're sorry?" Laura snapped. "No," Mark said, standing. "This proves I know when I've lost." He moved toward the door, but Elise stepped in front of him. "Where are you going?" "To do the one thing I still have control over." Mark pushed past her and walked out of the room. Laura looked at Elise. "Do you think he's serious?" But Elise didn't answer. She was too busy scrolling through the drive again. She had found something else, something she hadn't noticed before. A folder labeled Plan B. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. Photos of Elise herself, taken from a distance, in her car, at her gym, outside her apartment. "He was following me," she whispered. Laura stood up. "What?" Elise turned the laptop so she could see. There were hundreds of images, time-stamped, sorted into folders by date, some from months ago, and one labeled Final. Inside was a single video. Elise clicked it. Mark's face appeared on the screen. He was recording himself in a dim room. "If you're watching this," he said, "you've gone too far." The video cut off after just a few seconds. Elise slammed the laptop shut. "He knew we'd come for him. This was never about the affair. He's been planning something. Laura's voice trembled. We need to find him. Now. But when they stepped outside, the parking lot was empty. Mark's car was gone. So was he. Things just took a chilling turn. What was in that Plan B dash? And what is Mark really running from or toward? Keep watching because the next chapter is going to change everything. Coming up next. Elise and Laura drove in silence, the dim glow of the dashboard barely illuminating their haunted faces. Laura gripped the steering wheel tighter with every passing mile, her thoughts looping back to the video of Mark and that final, chilling sentence. If you're watching this, you've gone too far. Elise was glued to her phone, still scanning through the digital folder as if searching for a missing puzzle piece. Something she had overlooked. Then her eyes widened, a file hidden deep within one of the subfolders. Audio, not video. She tapped play, and Mark's voice filled the car speakers. I didn't cheat to betray you, his voice said. I cheated because I was being watched, because someone gave me no choice. The air went heavy. Laura hit the brakes and pulled to the shoulder, her breathing sharp. Play that again, she said. Elise rewound the file and played it once more. Mark continued. They knew things about you, about Emma, about everything. They told me to meet her at the motel, to act like it was real. They were testing me, or punishing me. Emma, their daughter. Laura turned in her seat. What is he talking about? Who's they? And what do you mean about Emma? Elise's throat tightened. She suddenly remembered the envelope she'd found in Mark's drawer weeks ago. The one marked M17. She thought it was just another insurance document. She never opened it. Now she pulled up an email draft Mark had started but never sent. It was addressed to Laura. Subject line: the truth about Emma. The message was unfinished. Just one line. She's not yours. Laura's blood drained from her face. No, that can't be right. She was born during our marriage. We did the tests, didn't we? Elise couldn't answer, because suddenly it made sense. The secret bank accounts, the folders, the paranoia. Mark wasn't just hiding a mistress. He was hiding the truth about their daughter, and maybe about who her real father was. A moment later, Elise's phone buzzed. No caller ID. She answered. A man's voice, deep and unfamiliar, said, "You're getting too close. Turn around. Forget what you think you know." Or she disappears. The call cut off. Elise stared at Laura. They had just stepped into something far bigger than infidelity. Everything you thought you knew is now in question. Who is Emma's real father? Who's behind the threats? And what secret has Mark been forced to keep buried all along? You don't want to miss what happens next. Keep watching. Coming up next. The motel room was dark and musty, lit only by a single flickering lamp. Laura stood motionless in the doorway, her breath caught somewhere between fury and disbelief. Elise sat on the edge of the bed, holding the printed DNA report in one hand and her phone in the other, still trembling from the threat they had just received. On the nightstand was the envelope Laura had never dared to open. Now it lay torn in half, and its contents were no longer a mystery. Emma was not biologically related to Laura, and Mark wasn't her father either. Then who is? Laura whispered, the weight of the question making her knees nearly buckle. Elise's lips trembled, and her voice broke. You're not going to believe me, but the man who just called me, I've heard his voice before. Laura turned sharply. Where? Elise slowly raised her eyes. In our old voicemail archives. It was during the time you were undergoing fertility treatment. There were messages, anonymous ones. He said things like, I hope she never finds out how it really happened. Laura's heart dropped. I thought those were prank calls, she whispered. Suddenly, Elise's phone buzzed again. A video message. They hesitated and pressed play. The screen lit up with a security camera feed from 17 years ago. Grainy but clear enough. A hospital corridor. A nurse rolling a baby in a crib. And then, a man in a janitor's uniform enters from the side. He checks both ways, approaches the crib, and swaps the identification tags on two newborns. The video froze on his face. Laura gasped. She knew that face. She had met him before. He was the motel owner. He was the man who had sent the threatening message. He was Emma's biological father. The truth struck like lightning. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a setup from the very beginning. Mark hadn't cheated. He had discovered the truth and tried to expose it, only to be silenced and blackmailed into faking an affair, to make Laura stop digging. Tears welled in Laura's eyes as she pieced it together. They had lived a lie for 17 years, but now the lie was dead, and someone, somewhere, was watching, ready to do whatever it took to keep the secret buried. Behind them, the motel door creaked. Someone else had entered the room, and this time, he wasn't leaving without Emma. The end. Or is it? Was this all part of a much deeper plan? Tell us in the comments, what would you do if your entire life turned out to be a carefully crafted lie? And if you were in Laura's place, would you risk everything to save a child who was never truly yours?